Most people will spend their entire lives confused about why they keep getting smaller instead of bigger, weaker instead of stronger, more bitter instead of more successful. They think they're being humbled by accepting every negative word spoken over their lives, but they're actually committing slow suicide. They've been programmed to believe that tolerance equals maturity, that accepting abuse equals wisdom, that letting people walk over them equals being a good person. But here's the truth nobody wants to tell you. There's a massive difference between someone trying to sharpen your sword and someone trying to break your weapon entirely. One voice wants to make you more effective at cutting through life's challenges, while the other voice wants to leave you defenseless against life's attacks. Most people can't tell the difference. So they treat both voices the same way. And that's exactly why they end up living lives that are far smaller than what they were designed for. There was once a young eagle who lived high up in the mountains. And every morning this eagle would soar through the valleys, learning to hunt, learning to fly, learning to be what nature designed him to be. One day, an experienced hunter saw this young eagle struggling with his landing technique. The hunter called out, "Young eagle, if you adjust your wing angle just before you touch down, you'll land with more grace and less effort." The eagle listened, tried the advice, and indeed his landings improved dramatically. But the very next day, a violent storm came through those same mountains, and the winds began to batter this young eagle mercilessly. The storm screamed at him, "You're nothing but a clumsy bird. You'll never amount to anything. You should just give up flying altogether." Now here's what's fascinating about this story. That young eagle had a choice to make. He could listen to both voices the same way, or he could learn the difference between instruction. You see, the hunter's words came with intention to improve. The storm's words came with intention to destroy. The hunter saw potential and offered guidance. The storm saw opportunity and offered devastation. The hunter wanted to make the eagle better at what he was born to do. The storm wanted to convince the eagle that he should stop doing what he was born to do entirely. This is the fundamental difference that will determine whether you rise or fall in life. There are voices around you right now that sound the same on the surface, but they come from completely different places, and they're heading toward completely different destinations. Some voices are mirrors. They reflect back to you what you can become better at. Other voices are hammers. They're trying to beat you down into something smaller than what you are. Now let me tell you about my friend who was a pottery master. This man had been shaping clay for over 30 years, and his work was sought after by collectors around the world. One day a young apprentice came to him and said, "Master, I noticed that when you center the clay on the wheel, you use your left hand more than your right. Have you ever tried balancing the pressure?" The master smiled, tried the suggestion, and found that his pottery became even more centered and symmetrical. But later that same week, someone walked into his workshop, looked at his beautiful creations and said, "This is just dirt that's been spun around. Anyone could do this. You're wasting your time with this nonsense." Now the master had the wisdom to see the difference. The apprentice was offering him a tool to improve his craft. The critic was trying to diminish the value of his craft entirely. The apprentice respected the master's skill and wanted to add to it. The critic disrespected the master's skill and wanted to subtract from it. The apprentice honored what the master was doing and suggested how to do it better. The critic dishonored what the master was doing and suggested he should do something else entirely. Here's what most people miss. Criticism and disrespect often wear the same clothes, but they have completely different hearts. Criticism says, "You can do this better." Disrespect says, "You shouldn't be doing this at all." Criticism focuses on your performance. Disrespect attacks your person. Criticism offers you stairs to climb higher. Disrespect tries to kick the ladder out from under you. When someone criticizes your work, they're actually acknowledging that your work matters enough to improve. When someone disrespects your work, they're trying to convince you that your work doesn't matter at all. When someone criticizes your approach, they believe in your destination. When someone disrespects your approach, they're questioning whether you deserve to reach any destination. The eagle who learns the difference will soar higher than he ever thought possible. The eagle who cannot tell the difference will spend his life grounded, believing that all voices carry the same weight and demand the same response. But they don't. They absolutely do not. You have something inside you that is too valuable to be diminished by disrespect, yet too important not to be refined by criticism. Your potential is non-negotiable, but your methods are always up for discussion. Your worth is not up for debate, but your techniques can always be enhanced. Your value as a human being is settled, but your skills as a human being are always developing. The moment you confuse these two realities is the moment you either become prideful and stop growing, or you become diminished and stop believing in yourself. Neither of these outcomes serves your destiny. Pride will keep you from the input you need to reach your potential. Low self-worth will convince you that you don't deserve to reach your potential at all. But when you understand the difference, when you can separate the voice of improvement from the voice of destruction, when you can welcome the mirror while rejecting the hammer, something powerful happens in your life. You become teachable without becoming breakable. You become flexible without becoming fragile. You become open to growth without becoming vulnerable to attack. This is not just about other people's words. This is about the quality of life you're going to live. This is about whether you'll spend your years rising or falling, building or breaking, becoming or diminishing. The choice is yours, but the choice begins with this understanding. Not all voices deserve the same response. Now let me tell you about a lighthouse keeper I once knew who understood something that changed my entire perspective on this principle. This man had been guiding ships safely to shore for over 20 years, and his lighthouse stood on one of the most dangerous coastlines in the region. Every week, ship captains would come to him with suggestions about navigation patterns, timing sequences, and signal improvements. Keeper, they would say, if you adjust your light rotation by 30 seconds, it gives us more time to correct our course. Or, have you considered adding a secondary beacon during the storm season? This lighthouse keeper would listen carefully to every suggestion because he understood that these captains had experience from the water that he didn't have from the shore. He welcomed their input because it made him better at his job. He implemented their ideas because they helped him save more lives. But here's what made this man extraordinary. While he was always willing to adjust his methods, he never allowed anyone to question the necessity of his life. One day, a wealthy merchant who had never sailed a day in his life walked up to that lighthouse and said, "This whole operation is outdated. Ships have modern equipment now. You're just wasting electricity keeping this old thing running. Nobody really needs this lighthouse anymore." The keeper looked at that merchant and said something I'll never forget. "Sir, you can tell me how to make my light brighter, but you cannot tell me to turn my light off." That lighthouse keeper understood the architecture of self-worth. He knew that his value, his very purpose for existing in that place, was not up for negotiation. But he also knew that his methods for fulfilling that purpose could always be improved. He built his identity on a foundation that could not be shaken, while keeping his techniques flexible enough to grow. This is where most people get confused about themselves. They think that accepting criticism means accepting that their fundamental worth is questionable. They believe that if someone can improve their methods, then someone can also diminish their value. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. Your worth was established long before anyone met you, and it will remain long after everyone stops talking about you. Your value is not determined by your performance. Your performance is simply how you express your value. Your significance is not earned through achievement. Achievement is simply how you demonstrate your significance. When you understand this distinction, criticism becomes fuel instead of fire. When someone tells you how to improve your presentation skills, they're not saying you don't deserve to speak. When someone suggests a better way to handle your finances, they're not saying you don't deserve to prosper. When someone offers you feedback on your relationships, they're not saying you don't deserve to be loved. But here's what you must never confuse. There's a massive difference between someone helping you express your worth better and someone trying to convince you that you have no worth to express. The first person is an ally to your growth. The second person is an enemy to your destiny. The lighthouse keeper knew that every ship captain who offered navigation advice was helping him fulfill his purpose more effectively. But he also knew that the merchant who questioned his entire existence was attacking the very foundation of why he was there. One voice was trying to make his light more effective. The other voice was trying to convince him his light wasn't needed. You see, respect is not just about how people treat you. Respect is about the foundation upon which all interaction is built. When someone respects you, they acknowledge your right to be where you are, doing what you're doing, becoming who you're becoming. They may question your methods, but they don't question your right to have methods. They may critique your approach, but they don't critique your right to approach. Disrespect does the opposite. Disrespect questions your right to occupy space, to have opinions, to pursue goals, to exist as you are. Disrespect says you don't belong where you are. Respect says you belong where you are, but here's how you can belong there even better. This is why the lighthouse keeper could accept endless suggestions about improving his lighthouse operations, but he would never accept anyone telling him that lighthouses themselves were unnecessary. This is why you can accept feedback about how to do what you do better, but you should never accept anyone telling you that what you do, your foundation is not negotiable. Your techniques are always improvable. Your existence is not questionable. Your excellence is always expandable. The person who understands this difference becomes unstoppable because they become unbreakable while remaining teachable. They stand firm in their identity while staying flexible in their methodology. This brings me to a diamond cutter I met years ago who taught me something profound about discernment. This man had been cutting precious stones for 40 years, and his reputation was known throughout the industry. One afternoon I watched as a young jeweler approached him and said, "Master, I've noticed that when you make your initial cut, you pause for exactly 3 seconds before applying pressure. What if you extended that pause to 5 seconds? It might give you even more precision." The master diamond cutter stopped his work, looked at the young man and said, "Show me." He tried the suggestion, and indeed, the extra 2 seconds gave him better control and a cleaner cut. He thanked the young jeweler and incorporated this technique into his work from that day forward. But later that evening, someone else walked into his workshop, looked at his tools and sneered, "You're just a glorified rock breaker. Any fool with a hammer could do what you do. You think you're some kind of artist, but you're just destroying perfectly good stones." Now here's what fascinated me about watching this master craftsman. He had developed what I call a wisdom filter. He could instantly separate the gold from the garbage, the valuable input from the worthless noise. He understood that not every voice deserves the same attention, and not every opinion deserves the same consideration. The young jeweler's words came with observation, respect, and a desire to see excellence increased. The critic's words came with ignorance, contempt, and a desire to see excellence diminished. The jeweler saw the master's skill and wanted to enhance it. The critic saw the master's skill and wanted to dismiss it. But here's the key. The master never spent emotional energy defending his worth to someone who had already decided he had none. He didn't waste time explaining the intricacies of diamond cutting to someone who had already concluded it was just rock breaking. He understood that some people are not qualified to evaluate what they're criticizing. You see, wisdom is not just about knowing what to accept. Wisdom is about knowing what to reject. It's not just about being open to input. It's about being selective about sources. Not everyone who has an opinion about your life has earned the right to influence your decisions. When criticism comes from someone who understands what you're doing, who respects what you're trying to achieve, who has knowledge in the area they're addressing, and who wants to see you succeed, that criticism is gold. Mine it, refine it, and use it to make yourself better. But when criticism comes from someone who doesn't understand your purpose, who doesn't respect your process, who lacks knowledge in what they're critiquing, and who would be satisfied to see you fail, that's not criticism at all. That's disrespect disguised as feedback, and it deserves to be discarded immediately. The diamond cutter taught me that you can extract value from almost any legitimate observation while completely ignoring illegitimate attacks. He could take the jeweler's technical suggestion and use it to improve his craft, while simultaneously dismissing the critic's personal attack without giving it a second thought. This is the wisdom filter in action. It asks 4 questions. Does this person understand what I'm doing? Do they respect what I'm trying to achieve? Do they have knowledge that qualifies their input? Do they want to see me succeed? If the answer to all 4 questions is yes, then you're receiving criticism worth considering. If the answer to any of these questions is no, then you're receiving disrespect worth rejecting. The master craftsman never confused the two, because he understood that his growth depended on welcoming the right voices while blocking the wrong ones. Your success depends on developing this same filter, this same ability to separate what deserves your attention from what deserves your dismissal. There's an ancient oak tree that stands in my hometown that has weathered over 200 storms. And this tree taught me something about the art of response that I want to share with you. During constructive seasons, when the gentle rains come and the nurturing winds blow, this oak tree bends gracefully, allowing its branches to move with the flow, soaking up every drop of nourishment, growing stronger and taller with each passing season. But when destructive storms arrive, those violent tempests that come not to nourish, but to uproot, not to strengthen, but to destroy, this same oak tree does something completely different. It doesn't bend. It doesn't yield. It stands firm. Its roots gripping deeper into the earth, its trunk refusing to break, its entire structure declaring that while it welcomes growth, it will not tolerate destruction. This oak tree has mastered what most people never learn, the difference between bending and breaking, between flexibility and fragility, between being teachable and being vulnerable. It responds to different forces with different strategies, because it understands that not every wind deserves the same response. And someone offers you genuine criticism, your response should mirror that oak tree in the nurturing season. Bend toward the input. Absorb what's valuable. Allow yourself to be shaped by wisdom. Thank the person for caring enough to help you grow. Ask questions that show you're genuinely interested in improving. Take notes. Follow up. Show that you value their investment in your development. But when someone approaches you with disrespect, when they come not to build but to tear down, not to improve but to diminish, your response must shift completely. You stand firm. You don't bend toward destruction. You don't absorb poison. You don't allow yourself to be shaped by malice. Here's how this looks in real life. When your supervisor says, your presentation was good, but if you slow down your pace and make more eye contact, you'll connect better with the audience. Your response is, thank you for that feedback. I'll work on both of those areas before my next presentation. But when someone says you have no business giving presentations, you're not cut out for this kind of work, your response is simply, I disagree, and then you move forward with your purpose intact. Notice the difference in energy expenditure. Constructive criticism gets your full attention, your gratitude, and your commitment to improvement. Disrespect gets minimal acknowledgement and maximum boundary setting. The oak tree doesn't waste energy fighting the nurturing rain. It uses that energy to grow. But it also doesn't waste energy trying to convince the destructive storm to be gentler. It uses that energy to stand strong. Your responses should follow this same wisdom. When criticism comes, engage fully. Ask for specifics. Request examples. Seek understanding. Show appreciation. But when disrespect comes, disengage quickly. Don't argue with someone who's already decided you're wrong. Don't explain yourself to someone who's already decided you don't matter. Don't defend your worth to someone who's already decided you have none. The oak tree has stood for 2 centuries, not because it accepted everything that came its way, but because it knew which forces deserved which responses. It grew stronger through proper bending and survive destruction through proper standing. Your life will be measured not by how much input you accepted, but by how wisely you discerned which input deserved acceptance and which deserved rejection. Master this art. And like that oak tree, you'll not only survive every storm, but emerge stronger from every season. Let me tell you about the master architect who built the most magnificent structures in his city. Buildings that still stand today as monuments to excellence and vision. This man had a reputation that preceded him wherever he went, and people would travel from distant places just to see his work. Throughout his career, he welcomed countless suggestions from engineers, builders, and fellow architects about his blueprints and designs. When a structural engineer would say, "Master, if you reinforce this corner beam and adjust the foundation depth by 2 feet, your building will withstand stronger earthquakes," he would listen intently, revise his plans, and thank the engineer for the expertise. When a master craftsman would suggest, "If you change the angle of these windows by 15 degrees, you'll capture more natural light throughout the day," he would incorporate the suggestion and credit the craftsman's insight. But here's what made this architect legendary. While he welcomed every legitimate suggestion for improving his blueprints, he never tolerated anyone attempting to vandalize his completed structures. When troublemakers would show up with hammers and spray paint trying to deface his finished buildings, he didn't sit them down for a discussion about artistic differences. He called security. He protected his work. He understood that there's a fundamental difference between someone trying to make your work better and someone trying to make your work disappear. This architect taught me something that has shaped how I approach my entire life. He said, "Son, there are people who come to add value to what you're building, and there are people who come to subtract value from what you've built. The first group deserves your attention and gratitude. The second group deserves your boundaries and protection." You see, when you apply this principle consistently throughout your life, something powerful begins to happen. You start attracting the right kind of people and repelling the wrong kind of people. Those who genuinely want to see you grow will feel welcomed and valued in your presence. Those who secretly want to see you fail will feel uncomfortable and move away from your circle. This is not about becoming arrogant or closed-minded. This is about becoming selective and wise. The architect didn't stop accepting input on his blueprints because he protected his finished buildings. In fact, his willingness to guard what he had built made people respect his openness to improve what he was building. When you show the world that you know the difference between construction and destruction, between improvement and diminishment, between building up and tearing down, you establish yourself as someone worth investing in. People begin to trust you with their best ideas because they see that you handle feedback with wisdom. They begin to respect your boundaries because they see that you don't allow anyone to waste your time or energy. But here's the deeper truth. This principle doesn't just change how others treat you. It changes how you see yourself. When you stop accepting disrespect, you start expecting respect. When you stop tolerating people who diminish your worth, you start attracting people who recognize your value. When you stop allowing others to define your limitations, you start discovering your own potential. The master architect became legendary not just because he built great buildings, but because he built them the right way, with the right people, for the right reasons. He created a legacy that outlasted his lifetime because he understood that how you build is just as important as what you build. Your life is your masterpiece in progress. Every day, you're adding rooms, strengthening foundations, improving designs, and creating something that will outlast your time on this earth. The people around you are either helping you build something magnificent or trying to convince you to settle for something mediocre. The criticism that comes from genuine care and expertise is like the engineer's suggestion: it makes your structure stronger. The disrespect that comes from jealousy and ignorance is like the vandal's hammer. It only seeks to damage what you've worked to create. 20 years from now, when people look at the life you've built, they won't remember every piece of criticism you received, but they will see the evidence of how you responded to that criticism. They won't recall every act of disrespect you encountered, but they will witness the strength you developed by refusing to accept it. Your children will learn more from watching how you handle feedback than from hearing your lectures about growth. Your colleagues will respect you more for how you maintain your boundaries than for how much you accomplish without them. Your legacy will be built not just on what you achieved, but on how you achieved it. The architect's buildings still stand because he built them with integrity, improved them with wisdom, and protected them with strength. Your life can have that same lasting impact when you embrace the same principles. Accept every legitimate opportunity to grow, but never accept any attempt to make you smaller than you are. There are people in your life right now who are watching how you handle this balance. They're observing whether you're teachable without being breakable, whether you're humble without being weak, whether you're confident without being closed-minded. Your response to criticism and disrespect is teaching them what's possible for their own lives. Some of them need to see that it's safe to grow, that accepting feedback doesn't mean accepting abuse. Others need to see that it's necessary to stand firm, that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. Your example is shaping their understanding of what healthy boundaries look like. This is bigger than just you. This is about the standard you're setting for everyone who comes after you. This is about the culture you're creating in your family, your workplace, your community. This is about showing the world that it's possible to be both strong and teachable, both humble and confident, both open and protected. The master architect's greatest achievement wasn't any single building he constructed. It was the standard of excellence he established that inspired generations of builders who came after him. Your greatest achievement won't be any single goal you accomplish. It will be the example you set that empowers others to build their own magnificent lives. Accept criticism, but never accept disrespect, not just for your own sake, but for the sake of everyone who's watching, everyone who's learning, everyone who needs to see that it's possible to grow without shrinking, to improve without diminishing, to become everything you were meant to be while remaining exactly who you are. This is your time. This is your opportunity. This is your legacy in the making.